And we see here in London evidence of sacred geometry in the London architecture. This is the pyramid on top of the pillar, and the pillars are representing the two pillars at the front of the Temple of Solomon, Boaz and Jachin. And this was believed, ancient wisdom, to bring energy into the earth. And one of the reasons that Tony Blair was so adamant that the dome was going to be built was to obtain the symmetry here between the male and the female. Here's the female, here's the male, the pillar, and Boaz and Jachin. The desire to bring energy into the city of London and abuse it. See the representation here in the Kabbalah. Yeah? The two pillars. The masculine, the feminine, the balance. This is Boaz, Jachin, and then the pillar here. And the Masonic symbol of the compass and the square. Because this is from the pyramid. You will have seen that yesterday if you were here for Alan Orford's presentation. Notice the similarity here. You know? And the Templars revere the pyramid. Yeah? Now we know the Egyptian wisdoms definitely went into Egypt with Moses. Moses was a master of the Egyptian mystery schools. And he would have very definitely passed that on, although he didn't go into Israel himself. He would have passed it on to Aaron or to Joshua. Was it the use of the dodecahedron grid, what some people call the Christ consciousness? Certainly, this wisdom exists within the secret societies because it was used to pinpoint the location for the Pentagon. It's a real enigma, isn't it? The Pentagon being used, or the Christ consciousness being used to bring energy into the Pentagon. You know, Plato said geometry, rightly treated, is the knowledge of the eternal. So, you know, Plato, who also made the observation that we Greeks are but children to you Egyptians, so he recognized the importance of the geometry. Was it the bloodline? Of course, very topical at the moment with Dan Brown's novel and Holy Blood, Holy Grail getting back into the bestsellers list. Let me tell you, in my opinion, this is misinformation. This is disinformation. This is deliberately to throw people off the track. But it could be, you know, the bloodline of Christ through the Magdalene. But there's a reference in the Bible that most theologians will stay well clear of. And it is Genesis chapter 6, where it says, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Because the Anunnaki lived for many thousands of years. Now we say, oh, it's ridiculous. They can't have lived for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. Yesterday we heard Hamish Miller talking about the crickets and the cricket life cycle of a day. You know, and there are some life forms that have a life cycle of less than a day. So our 8,000 weeks, if we lived to 80, we live 4,000 weeks. So that's what, 28,000 days. So there are some life forms that we have a life cycle of 28,000 times their life cycle. So multiply our life cycle by 28,000. It's a big number. There's other references as well in books that didn't make it to the Bible. In Enoch, we have the reference, and the angels, the children of heaven, saw them, handsome and beautiful daughters, and desired them. And they were all together, 200, and they descended into Ardos, which is the summit of Hermon, Mount Hermon. And they called the Mount Hermon, for they swore and bound one another by a curse. They were bound to this physical realm. And then the book of Jared, which we have access to via the limited information that's still been released from the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the days of Jared, 200 watchers descended on Ardis, the summit of Mount Hermon. On this mountain the watchers swore an oath and bound themselves to it. The watchers, the descendants of the Anunnaki, who were locked here for whatever reason, they were locked into the physical realm. Here is Mount Hermon. Any idea where Mount Hermon is? Oh, it's in... Huh?
It's between Lebanon and Syria.
Yes, it's in Lebanon, just north of the Israeli border with Lebanon and just west of the border with Syria, right in the area that we're fighting over, or we're not fighting over, is being fought over right now. Maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. Andrew Collins, who spoke here last year, has written an excellent book on the Watchers. And there is a lot of discussion and debate as to who the Watchers were. But I think the general consensus is that they were part of the Anunnaki, and they were effectively sentenced to be locked into the physical realm of Earth. Now, some of the ancient wisdom has been sustained through time, despite the attempts to suppress it. And I just latch on one because of the time, but Giordano Bruno came to England and came that close to convincing Queen Elizabeth I to make effectively the Egyptian religion the religion of the UK. But of course the priests had other ideas. Giordano Bruno left the UK, went back to Italy, where he met the fate of all heretics at that time and was burned. Now, we have come into a period over the last 200 years where the ancient wisdom has been returned to us. Starting around about the 1820s with Jean-Francois Champollion and his deciphering of the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Interestingly enough, when he was 7 years of age, he told his parents that he had come here to decipher the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Now, when he was 7, that was 1897, the Rosetta Stone wasn't discovered until 1899. And the Rosetta Stone was, of course, absolutely critical to his work. The wisdom has been retained, though, within the secret societies. And this symbol here, which is on the back of the dollar bill, and it represents the separated capstone from the pyramid. And what this represents is that the knowledge shall be the domain of the few, the domain of the elite. And the masses will be separated from that knowledge. Refer back to Lloyd George's comment to the editor of the Manchester Evening News. There is no question. It's spelt out in words of one syllable here. George Bush Sr. made the comment on September the 11th, 1990 and 1991. In two separate speeches, he stated, there will be a new world order. September the 11th, 1990 and 1991, 11 and 10 years before 9/11. The objectives are very clear. It's one world government, one world economy, one world religion. And as was spelt out, as Andy stated this morning, but I think it's Dr. Ted Andrews, in Texas, a desired population, a global population of less than 1 billion. And they make no bones about it. The US has a eugenics program in a number of states. No other country in the world practices eugenics. Now, just wanted to touch here with Hypatia a second. Does that look familiar? That relief? This is the only known relief of Hypatia, by the way. How about this one? Diana was Tony Blair's blooding. 3 months after he was appointed to the position of Prime Minister of the UK, this was his blooding to oversee the murder of Princess Di. They had to take her out. Had she connected with her higher self, which of course, as we know, normally occurs around, give or take, the age of 40. She was 37 at the time. They knew who she was. They knew that once she accessed the higher self, she would be unstoppable. Do you know what her next 2 roles were to be after August 31st, 1997? The following week, the following day, she was due to give a presentation on anti-personnel landmines. And the week after that, she was scheduled to go to Palestine and make a documentary on the children of Palestine. A very, very powerful player who, for the New World Order, needed to be taken out. So what is the bloodline? What bloodline is being protected? Yes, it is a bloodline, but it has nothing to do with the bloodline of Christ or the bloodline of the Magdalene. It's the bloodline of the Watchers. It's the bloodline of those who are locked in to this physical realm. Now, I'm not asking you to believe this. I don't necessarily believe it myself. This is their belief system. This is the belief system of the secret societies, the upper echelons of the secret societies. What they call the blue degrees, the first, second, and third degrees of Masons, they have no idea about what I'm talking about. This is information that is kept for the higher degrees, like 32 and 33rd degrees of Masonry. You know, and these guys are getting cocky because this was the bus on July 7th last year. This was on the side. Outright terror, bold and brilliant. You know what? These guys are saying, you know, we know there's some of you out there who know what we're doing. We know. And you know what? It might be 100, it might be 500, it might be 1,000, it might be 10,000, it might be 100,000, it might be 1,000,000 or 2, but it's not enough. It's not enough. They are raising the game. The pattern, I talked last year about the reason I was able to identify this was a false flag terror job was because the template of 9/11 could be overlaid on 7/7. I'm not going to regurgitate that. It's on my DVD, which is outside. The same template can be overlaid in Bali, in Mumbai. These guys are deliberately setting about an agenda of disruption, of chaos. The motto of the Brotherhood, Ordo ab Chaos, order out of chaos. It's the Hegelian dialectic of create the problem, offer the reaction, and then ultimately the solution. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This crop circle appeared just after 7/7 last year. It's the six-pointed star, the symbol of Zionism. The Israeli flag, I haven't got the Israeli flag up there, but with the possible exception of the Irish flag, it is the only flag that states categorically its territorial objectives, because the Israeli flag has a blue line below the Star of David and a blue line above. And that represents the desire to greater Israel, all the land between the Nile and the Euphrates. Greater Israel. And Mount Hermon is right there. Right there. Slap bang in the middle. Now, something very interesting about Mount Hermon. It sits at 33.53 degrees east and 33.53 degrees north. Now, if you go to Google Earth and you check out those numbers, you'll come back and you say, no, it doesn't. Well, it does. When you use the meridian, the rose line meridian of Paris. The zero meridian was not changed to Greenwich until, I think, 1886. So up until then, the zero meridian was through Paris. If you take Paris, Mount Hermon sits at 33.53 degrees. Now, there's something else here. 33.53 degrees is exactly 2012 nautical miles. Mount Hermon sits 2012 nautical miles east of the zero meridian and north of the equator. Have the knowledge that the Templars brought back, was it the coding as to the point of return of the Watchers or their masters? Were they sentenced perhaps to 5,500 years on this earth? The other belief system of the pathocracy, the players at the senior level in the hierarchies, is that they believe they are totally locked into this physical realm. And they believe that's the price they have to pay. And normally, in normal human nature, is that as people get older, they become more mellow, they become more chilled. They don't even want to kill the grandkids anymore. They're quite relaxed. But with these guys, they become more brutal, more vicious. Because their belief system is that the more they do in this current incarnation to further the agenda of their bloodline, the higher up they will come back in the pecking order when they